Okay, the next concept would be a cold site. And when we're talking about disaster recovery, we have a couple different things that we need to be aware of. Our data centers, obviously, are expensive entities. We have all of our different things, servers, networking, cabling, power, storage arrays, so on and so forth. Well, if we're going to have a disaster or a true disaster recovery strategy, you need to define, do you want to have an exact duplicate of your data center that you can just walk into? Do you want to have something that you can get into relatively quickly, or do you want to just have a building you can move to in the event of a disaster? Well, a cold site is just that. A cold site is an alternate location that's not actively online. So that may be shared infrastructure with other companies, or it may be a dedicated facility, but it's simply just not outfitted yet. All right, so the infrastructure must be installed and configured. So that means your server racks, your power, cabling, all these things must be installed. Server switches, routers, storage arrays. The data must then be copied over or moved over. And then personnel may be locally available, or they may need to be relocated from an existing location. So as you can imagine, a cold site is going to take some time to build up and make operational. However, you do have a location available, so you don't have to scramble in the event of a crisis. You know where you're going to. It's just that it's going to take some time to get all of your equipment and all of your infrastructure into that location. The next would be a hot site, and that's kind of the exact opposite. A hot site is an active location that has redundant systems with current data. So all of your critical systems are duplicated. It's the most expensive of the DR options because, again, you're going to need to have everything duplicated. All your servers, storage, networking, cabling, power, so on and so forth. Plus, the data is going to have to be actively copied over or relatively close in time. It may be 5 minutes, it may be a day or a couple hours, whatever that level of tolerance is, but it needs to be relatively current so that you can pick up operations relatively quickly. And then something else to keep in mind, just geographically, it should be relatively close. Right? This is just kind of as an aside. If you're looking for a true hot site DR that you can get back up and running quickly, it should be relatively close to ensure synchronous replication of data. All right, so that way, when you go to move over, your data is pretty much current, and you can also have quick relocation of employees. If you have to try to travel across the entire country, that's going to not be very conducive to getting back up to speed quickly. And then there is a kind of an in-between a hot site and a cold site. If you take hot water and warm water and you mix them together, what do you get? You get warm water. Well, a warm site is similar, okay, in nature. So a warm site has some of the infrastructure up and running. It may be a shared building. It may have racks, power, HVAC, networking, so on and so forth. But it's not fully operational, but it has all the basics. So it still takes some time to bring your individual systems online and your data copied over, but as you can imagine, it's quicker to build out, and it's quicker to bring online than a cold site, and it's also less expensive than a hot site. Okay, module review. Well, in this module, we talked about business continuity concepts. We talked about the planning, the policies, procedures necessary to keep that business up and running in the face of a failure or an event. And again, it doesn't necessarily have to be something catastrophic like a meteor coming out of the sky. It could be a sprinkler head, or it could be some type of catastrophe within the actual C-level or executive management of the company. It doesn't necessarily have to be strictly hardware or infrastructure. Okay, it could be personnel as well. We also talked about fault tolerance and the various components that make up fault tolerance, the hardware to provide redundancy and availability, because again, the name of the game is keeping things moving. Okay, business continuity, fault tolerance is a component of that. And then we talked about disaster recovery concepts, some of the things around planning and the policies to bring a business back online in the event of a disaster. Because as we mentioned, you can plan, you can have fault tolerance, you can have redundancy and so forth, but a disaster at some point will strike. So you have to have disaster recovery planning in place, infrastructure, whether it's a hot, warm, or cold site, to make sure that you can get back up and running relatively quickly. So I hope this module was informative for you, and I'd like to thank you very much for watching.